5 scariest jumpscares. Scary alerts. Número 1.
Hello everyone and welcome. Today I am going to be ranking all of the heists depending on solo gameplay purposes. There is no teammates, it's just mainly going to be us and our robotic friends. Or at least I think these are our friends, I'm not really particularly sure. Who knows what they're even thinking behind those brains, but do they even have brains to begin with? Anyway, let's leave the bullshitness behind. So, I'm only going to be ranking all of the heists for only solo gameplay purposes, so the way I'm going to be ranking these is in 5 categories. First one being is gunfight intensity. That basically means how intense a gunfight can get and how easily you're able to get overrun by the cops. The annoyance is just simply how annoying the objectives are and as well as the spawning locations of the enemies. Challenging is just basically how challenging the heist is in general, and then the fun is just, well, how fun it is in general, and then finally the payment, and that's pretty much it. And I'll also, just to like add the spiciness at the very end, I'm just going to be ranking them through 0 out of 10 or through like a tier list, like either being B or an A or C tier. That's what it is. If this feels a little bit convoluted, that's because it is. I am probably on my 5th energy drink as I am talking about this. And yes, I should probably going to be sleeping for some of you that are, I'm guessing, concerned about my health, but don't be because give it a couple years and I'll be gone. So don't worry. Without further ado, let's get into it. No Rest for the Wicked is a very simple bank heist job that allows you to turn off your brain and have a lot of fun. The gunfight intensity is split between 2 categories. It can be either extremely easy or it can be extremely hard. Easy because you're spending most of your time in close quarters engagements, and we all know that close quarters engagements focused type of situations are very easy to control because cops can't really do much when they're fighting you in close quarters. But the hard part mostly comes in from the escaping part. That's where the enemies mostly try to spread around and try to corner you and fight you in the distance. But again, it can be a little bit intense from time to time, but majority of the time you're not really going to be get surrounded extremely easily, but the only time I can see people get surrounded is through the ending part of this heist. Because cops tend to usually try to separate from each other and fight you in the distance because they know your guns suck ass in the distance, so they use it as an advantage against you and they will try to corner you. But again, it can either be extremely easy or it can be extremely hard, up to the person. When it comes to challenginess of the heist, it is not even challenging at all. It is extremely fun, and, you know, the funness is really fun. I don't think I really need to say anything else besides it is an extremely fun heist that allows you to just simply mind your own business, try not to focus on too much or try not to sweat too much, and that's pretty much it. The annoyance rate only comes in 2 parts. That is, the fact that you're having to defend the fire alarms on 2 separate occasions. And you might think, well, that's not a big of a deal. Well, it is, because you have to also run down the stairs and turn off the sprinklers and then run back upstairs to prevent the cops from turning off. Again. But you might think, well, I can just bring in a sentry turret. Well, you could. Or you could also bring in an infrasonic mine, but then again, when you don't have an ECM jammer for the die packs, then you're not going to be able to defuse them all in time. So yeah, the annoyance part mostly just comes in the fact that you're not able to defend the 2 fire alarms more quicker, and the fact that you have to bring in a specific equipment to prevent the die packs from going off, and yada yada yada, you get the gist of it. And that's pretty much it. The only problem I can really say about the No Rest for the Wicked is the fact that the payment is extremely terrible, even with all the bags that you secured. When it comes to farming, this is not really a good heist, but again, this is just a simple heist that allows you to just have fun, turn off your brain. That's pretty much it. There's not much else to say about this one. Road Rage is probably by far one of the most anti-solo heists to ever exist in Payday 3, mainly because of the objective. The objective is not really particularly bad when you're playing in co-op, but considering the fact how slow the trucks move, it can get extremely boring and very annoying. Let's also not mention the fact that the gunfight intensity is literally all over the fucking place, because of how slow the truck moves, literally a snail pace, it can get a little bit intense from time to time because A, you're out in the open, and B, you're limited to where you're moving. And so it puts you in a tough position where even if you try to maneuver around the truck to try to find cover, there will most certainly be a cop behind you or on the sides ready to gun your ass down. And your biggest problem in this heist are snipers. Not against you, but your team AI. Your team AI plays a very big role of providing support and cover for you, and without the support or cover, you're practically just a sitting duck and is pretty much invulnerable to get shot from every single direction. So snipers are just going to be there taking down your team AI within a split second. But once you get past through the boring objective that is pushing the truck at a slow pace, and then you're just going to be drilling the truck open, lockpick the the doors and get yourself out. It's not really particularly boring to say the least, but it is a little bit frustrating from time to time. It is a very challenging heist and it requires you to be very prepared and very skillful with your gun, because if you're not able to kill the cops within a short duration, then expect your ass to be overwhelmed extremely easily. It is a fun heist, but when it comes to challenging, it is very challenging. It will test your limits essentially, because the cops will not stop. They will rush your ass 24/7 in this heist. They will not fight you in the distance. They will rush after your ass and do their best to surround you. So you have to be very prepared for it. It's an A heist. It is definitely a better heist than No Rest for the Wicked, but it can be a little bit annoying from time to time. It is an 8 out of 10 heist and an A tier, but the payment is also really good. It is probably a better one than most of the heists that Payday 3 has. But again, it is a very challenging one and requires a lot of skill to finish this one solo. When you're not using exploits, I mean. For God's sakes, people, don't hide in those little fucking corners, please, because holy shit, y'all are boring. Dirty Ice, in my personal opinion, is just basically No Rest for the Wicked, but almost better in certain situations here and there. But again, this could just be me. When it comes to gunfight intensity, this heist is pretty solid. It's basically in the middle ground. It's not too intense, nor it is too boring. The gunfight intensity is just mediocre. Even when you do eventually get surrounded by the cops, because the Dirty Ice is a close quarters engagement type of map, you're able to get rid of cops much more easily and without having any sort of problems whatsoever. It's a really simple heist. There's no annoyance in this one, basically. Except for the part that the cops sometimes disable the power, preventing the scanner to work. But again, that's up to you if you want to focus on getting up all the bags and scan them up. This is also one of those types of heists where you can either finish this in 2 minutes, or you can either finish this in like 10-12 minutes, depending on if you want to scan up all of the bags or not. But again, it's a simple heist that is just practically fun. There is no challenge to this one whatsoever. It's just simple plain heist job that allows you to turn off your brain and just have fun. And it's a fun heist, that's all I can pretty much say. The only time your fun is going to be ruined is when cloakers spawn in. Holy shit, these pricks spawn in such fast rates that I cannot even understand why the fuck do they spawn so fast, especially when the FBI van comes in, because holy shit, their spawn rate is completely busted in this heist. The only big downside I can really say about Dirty Ice is the fact that the payment is complete terrible, like it's complete garbage. Even when you scan up all of the excuse me. Even when you scan up all of the jewelry, it's pretty much useless because you only get like what, 500k maximum at least, and that payment is just not really particularly great. So it's a solid heist, but the payment is pretty terrible. That's the only thing I can pretty much say about this heist. But yeah, it's a 7.5 out of 10, or B tier. High B tier in my personal opinion. It's better than No Rest for the Wicked. But of course, some may like this heist, some may hate it, but this is just simply my own personal interpretation. Rock the Cradle is by far one of the more interesting heists than both No Rest for the Wicked and as well as Dirty Ice, because of it has literally 3 objectives. Find shit, set the cage together, and get the fuck out. That's pretty much it. There's really no convoluted objective that you have to protect, except for the fact that you have to disable the security blockage from the vault, and that's pretty much it. But other than that, you're mostly going to be spending your time running around looking for loot. The gunfighting intensity can get pretty intense, as some of the cops do sometimes blend in with the bright neon colors. I have seen some cops being sneaky little bastards that stay at the back of the front lines, just shooting at you in the distance, blending in with the color, and you're sitting there squinting your eyes like, where the fuck is he shooting me from? And then you realize there's a cop just at the corner of the battlefield, just shooting at you. But that does not happen all the time, so this is just simply me overcomplicating things like I always do. But majority of the time, the gunfight intensity is pretty good, as cops will tend to come from every single direction you can practically think of. And I mean literally everywhere. But regardless, the only part I can think of the heist becoming annoying is the common tendency that the cops have, and that is just ignoring you entirely and just go for your loot and just yoink it and bring it to the start of the heist. That's the only time I can practically think of. Because you're the only one really moving the loot around, there's no one else actually coming in to defend your loot, unless you place an infrasonic mine or a turret to defend it. You can't really command the bots to defend a specific section, which is kind of sad, but you know, I'm not going to complicate things more. But yeah, that's the only part I can practically think of that is annoying. The heist is a tiny bit challenging, as if you don't have the zipline favor, the cops can sort of block you from going upstairs, because they do sometimes just chill there and wait for you to come towards them. But other than that, the heist is not even remotely challenging at all. And it's a really fun heist. It is basically No Rest for the Wicked and Dirty Ice, but way more better. And when it comes to payment, it is way more better than both of those combined, as you're able to get 650k at least maximum. Correct me if I'm wrong when you're doing this on live, but again, I could be wrong about this one. It's a better heist. It's a low tier A, but it gets an 8 out of 10. It's a very solid heist that is really fun. Oh boy, Under the Surface. Holy shit, do I hate this heist. Anyway, Under the Surface is by far one of the worst heists that exist in Payday 3, mainly because of two reasons. Firstly is the standing circles objective, and secondly, the constant phone searching objective. Yeah, like, here's the thing, the gunfight intensity is pretty good. It can get intense because of like how wide and open the map is, and you're able to get surrounded extremely easily if you're not really cautious. And the problem I really have with this heist are the objectives. You're going to be spending 90% of the heist looking for QR codes, standing in circles for like 20 seconds. Why is it that long? I don't even know why, but again, it's just so boring, honestly. It's not even like challenging to begin with. Like, sure, you can get easily overwhelmed, but like, majority of the time, because you're standing in circles and they're like in a really bullshit position, you're able to literally just use that as an advantage just to like kill the cops more easily, because they have a hard time like approaching to you when you're standing in circles mostly. They'll just stay in the distance, or if not from cover, giving you enough time to like just stand in the circles. It's such a boring heist, honestly. Like, the only thing that's going to kill you is boredom. That's pretty much it. It's not even a fun heist to begin with. It's like, sure, it pays you really well, but holy shit are the objectives just so boring. Holy shit. Like, if it was the same thing like Art Gallery, where you're just hacking a computer and that's pretty much it, then yeah, I think the heist might be in a better position, but oh my god, Surphaze, why with the standing circles, man? Holy shit. The payment is good, that's the only thing about this heist, and as well as the gunfight intensity. That's it. It's a D tier heist. It gets a 4 out of 10. Golden Sharke is one of those heists where at first half it gets extremely boring, but on the second half it can get extremely intense and really fun, because the first half of the heist, and the number one reason it can get boring, is the standing circles objectives. Now, hear me out, hear me out. I understand that the standing circles is something that everyone hates. I understand that, but hear me out. Once you start drilling the door and you're constantly looking for oxygen, that's where the real intensity comes in. Because of how big the heist is, you're able to get it surrounded extremely easily, especially when you're in the vault room, as cops can come from every single direction. They can come from the front entrance, they can also come from the upper floors where the vault room is, and some of them even stay on the upper floor just to like shoot at you. They just sort of just chill there. So it can get a little bit intense. It's more like an arcadey horde shooter type of situation, so it does get a little bit intense at the fact that you also have to look for oxygen and you have to legit like run around and look for it. And because of how big the lobby is, you can get easily overwhelmed, so you have to be very prepared for it. The gunfight intensity is pretty good on the second half, to say at least. But when you're on the rooftop, that's where shit hits the fan, because the enemies come in high numbers and will try their best to fight at you in the distance. Sure, there will be some that will come at you on close range, but majority of them will just simply stand back and fight against you. Your biggest enemy in Golden Sharke is techies and as well as snipers. Snipers because they're able to shred your AI, and techies because they're going to apply more pressure than you already can handle. So yeah, be ready to deal with those two pieces of shits. Annoyance rate, the objective is okay. The only annoying part is, like I said, the standing circles, but other than that, it's not even annoying to begin with. The spawning locations of the enemies are not really particularly that bad, as it's fair, to say at least. That's all I can pretty much say. It's fair. It can get a little bit challenging from time to time because you're the only one that is able to carry 2 bags, meanwhile your crew can only carry 1. So be prepared to move a lot of bags. Unless you have the zipline bag favor, then that's where the lifesaver comes in perfectly. But if you're not using any of those, then well, be prepared to spend like 10 minutes moving the bags. The heist is fun. It's not like extremely fun, but it is definitely fun once you get past through the annoyance. And the payment is extremely good. The amount of money you're able to get from Golden Sharke alone is incredible. Even if you don't secure all of the bags, you get a really good amount of XP and as well as cash. So it is definitely a really good heist, but it can get a little bit annoying from time to time and can frustrate you sometimes. But majority of the time, it's a solid heist. 99 boxes is the same thing with the new Golden Sharke, but I feel like... excuse me. I feel like 99 boxes is by far one of the most unique heists in Payday 3 because the gunfight intensity is really good because you're able to fight enemies at practically almost any type of verticality. You can fight someone that's like literally on the same ground level as you, some of them even fight on a container, some of them stay on the rooftops to fight you. Like, cops can pretty much just be anywhere. It's not just going to be on the same ground level as you. You can pretty much just fight them in almost every single direction you look at, and it is really fun from time to time, and you can get extremely easily overwhelmed. Like, this is by far one of those heists where you can get extremely easily overwhelmed. Even if you have the most overpowered weapon, like, they're able to literally close in on you extremely quick. The annoyance rate is okay. Like, the only annoying part about 99 boxes is the standing circles, but unlike Under the Surface and Golden Shark, where it takes like 15 seconds to finish one, this one only takes like 5 seconds or 7 seconds maximum to finish one, and that's pretty good. It can put you in a bit of a stressful position because the game requires you to go back to the secure location to prevent the component from losing value. So you're in a position where you have to make a run for it. Ignore any enemies that are like running at you. And if you're trying to fight the enemies that are like blocking your path or any enemies that are like around you, you're wasting time. Because you're wasting time, the value of the components will start to degrade much more quicker. So you have to either make a run for it entirely or run and hit, but you're risking about the fact that the component can degrade. But yeah, it is a challenging heist. I'd say it's one of those really challenging heists that requires you to be on your feet constantly and be very aware. It is definitely fun, but like, the standing circles is the only thing that I sort of dislike, but unlike the other ones that I mentioned, it's not like it takes like 20 minutes to complete it. And that's pretty much all I can say. It is definitely a really fun heist and it can get challenging. The payment is really good. You get a really good amount of money if you secure every single bit of loot that exists. It is definitely a 8 out of 10 heist, or a 7 out of 10, 7.5 I'd say. It's a definite high B tier heist. The only real complaint I have is the standing circles. That's pretty much all I can say. That's literally it. Other than that, the heist is extremely good. I like the heist. I have a lot of fun. I always have fun playing this one because of how intense it can get. Now, by far my number one favorite heist, Touch the Sky. And I might be a little bit biased to this one, but I feel like this is probably one of the best heists that Payday 3 has, in my opinion. Sure, it has the standing circles one, I understand that, and it can get boring, but once you get past through those, the heist becomes extremely fun. Because the heist is very weird, to say the least, because it's both close range focus but as well as sort of long range focus, because the map is sort of open and as well as wide, to say the least, but mostly you're spending your time in Mason's room where you're going to be fighting cops from coming in 3 different types of directions. The intensity is really good, as you can get pretty much overwhelmed in every single room you enter, whether that be in his bedroom, whether that be on downstairs, whether that be in in Mason's own office. You can get overwhelmed in pretty much every single direction because of how much cops spawn in this map, but it is really fun. The annoyance is, it's not really there. The only annoying part is the standing circles objective. The spawning locations can be a little bit annoying because they literally spawn like right next to you, but that gives you enough time to actually react to them and get rid of them out of sight. And it can get a little bit tough from here and there, but majority of the time the heist is pretty easy to play around with, but it does get a little bit challenging. And it's all really fun heist. Like, it is such a really fun heist to play around with. The payment is really good if you get every single bag that there is on the heist, but other than that, it's basically a good heist. It's basically better than Rock the Cradle, No Rest for the Wicked, as well as Dirty Eyes, in my opinion. It's just basically all of those, but more better. I genuinely love playing this heist, and it's a definite A tier. And it gets a solid 8 out of 10 when it comes to ranking rate. It is definitely a really fun heist that I feel like a lot of people should, you know, enjoy, to say the least. Syntax Error is one of those heists where at first it may seem a little bit complicated on how to finish objectives, but in actuality it is a really simple heist that can be done in like, what, 5 minutes or so. But let's forget about it. The gunfight intensity is split into 2 parts, mediocre and completely intense. Mediocre, what I mean is that It can get a little bit intense when you're fighting cops under the basement, but when you're on the very end of the heist and waiting for Bile to come in and pick you up, it can get a little bit intense because you're out in the open and you're forced to stay in a specific position. You're not really allowed to really move around the park or on the outside of the map because the game sort of forces you to stay next to the concert because Bile's not coming to pick you up when you're leaving. So yeah, like on the basement, it can get intense from time to time, but majority of the time, there's a lot of cover and a lot of ways to move around in the heist. To the fact that where even if you do get overwhelmed, you're actually able to just go to a different section of the map and without have any sort of problems whatsoever. So even though you're easily able to get overwhelmed, you're able to maneuver around the map really easily. The annoyance rate is really not that big of a deal because the only time the heist gets sort of annoying is at the very end where you're unable to actually move around. I still hate the fact that you can't really move around the park more freely. I just sort of hate it that the game forces you to stay in a specific position, but we're not going to talk about it. The spawning location of the enemies are pretty solid. They're not really particularly annoying, but the two enemies that's going to really put a dent on your defense is going to be the Techian as well as the FBI van. Those are the two enemies that's going to really test your skills, to say it least. That they will be the biggest annoying ones in the game. But yeah, the only time that I can say the heist is annoying is at the very end, and that's pretty much it. Challenging, it can get a little bit challenging from time to time, but majority of the time it's a pretty easy heist. It's not complicated, but it's not too hard either. It's sort of mediocre, to say it least. And it is genuinely a fun heist. It just has you run around, find some clues on where the servers are, and that's pretty much it. Or unless you want to be like me and just grab all of them and get the fuck out. It's a simple heist. It's pretty fun. The payment is really good. The payment is actually really good if you get all of the bags. But other than that, Syntax Error is a pretty good heist. It's an 8 out of 10 heist, and it deserves to be on A tier in my opinion. It's one of the fun heists. Of course, the first time you played it, it can get a little bit confusing from here and there, but once you sort of understand the ropes of the heist, it is extremely fun. Finally, for the final base heist of Payday 3, yes, I know we have Cook-Off, but that does not really count as a base heist, so shut up. Finally, we have is Boys in Blue, one of my #1 favorite heists that exists in Payday 3. I know I said Touch the Sky is my #1 favorite, but think of this as an alternative favorite, so let's get into it. Boys in Blue is probably by far one of the most intense solo heists to ever exist in Payday 3, because holy shit, the spawn rate of these cops are absolutely fucking enormous. If you even look away for a split second, these fuckers are going to be waiting for you outside, or even inside. Like, there'll be probably like 10 minimum waiting for you. But the gunfight intensity is intense. Every single corner, every single direction you look at, there's going to be like maybe 5 to 10 cops ready to shoot at your ass. It is intense. Like, it is just constant intense. And the snipers just constantly spawning around in almost every single location is just crazy. Well, not exactly every single location, but you get what I mean. I'm trying to overcomplicate things just to make this look cool. Okay? Shut up. Anyway. But when it comes to annoyance, the only time I can really think of this heist being annoying is the fact that if the keys did not spawn inside the DOC van and you haven't gotten the keys yet, then that's where the only annoying part can come in. And the spawning location of the enemies can be a little bit annoying because they literally spawn in such high rates. Those are the only time I can practically think of the heist being very annoying. But the heist is extremely fun. Like, it is so damn fun to play this. And it is very challenging. It requires to be on your feet and constantly aware 24/7. It requires you to have a lot of skill with your weapon. Because if you're not able to kill those cops in time, they're going to surround you very easily and wreck your ass. Especially the bulldozers. But other than that, the heist is genuinely amazing. It is probably by far, in my opinion, one of the best heists that have existed in Payday 3. It is literally just amazing. It's not perfect, but it's genuinely amazing. The only problem I can really say about the Boys in Blue is the payment. How are we able to get 600k with just gold is beyond me, because I am no gold stealer here and there, but I'm pretty certain gold is very expensive for today's society, so... The way I say society, I sound like the fucking Joker, but anyway, the payment is the only problem here. You can literally play Golden Shark and get more payment than this shit, but, you know, I'm not really going to question about that one. So the only problem I can really say is, well, if the key did not spawn inside the DLC van, and, well, the payment. That's pretty much it. But other than that, this heist is a 9 out of 10. It's an S tier heist. It is definitely one of the best heists that Payday 3 has, in my opinion. I absolutely love playing this heist. It is so intense. I just love it. Cook-Off. Do I really need to say anything about Cook-Off? No, you're just practically becoming Walter White and just cook shit. That's it. That's all I can pretty much say. The gunfight intensity is alright. Sometimes you get overwhelmed, sometimes you don't get overwhelmed. It just sort of really depends on how far you're into the heist. Because on the first half of the heist, it is extremely easy, but after that, that's where this real problem comes in, because bulldozers will start barging at you, heavy units come in, yada yada yada, you get the gist of it. Especially when the final charge comes in, and where the cops are just constantly like shutting off the power and whatnot. The only time I can really say the heist can get annoying is if the cops are like constantly disabling the power switch, and the power switch is like on the opposite side of the map, especially at the shack, the tiny one, to say at least. Not next to it, but the one that's like slightly further away. Challenging, it is very challenging because you have to be on your feet and have to listen to Shade rambling about how high Bane was on methamphetamine. So you just have to simply hope the fact that she doesn't start yapping about how dumb Bane was when you're cooking shit. So yeah, the heist at first can be fun, but then later on it just gets extremely boring, because if you're planning on cooking all of the bags in cook-off, then be prepared to get extremely bored. So yeah, I'm happy that there's like a limit to how much bags you can cook, because I do not like infinite cooking, to say at least, because it can get a little bit dull. But I know some of you will say, well, just escape. Yes, I know, but there will come a point where I sort of want more, but at the same time I want to leave. So that's where the limitation from Payday 3 comes in. But again, I don't really care. The payment is extremely good, and it's probably by far one of the best ones in the game. It's a B tier heist. It's a 7 out of 10, but like, there's really not much to it, honestly. It's just cook-off. Like, do I really need to say anything else? But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If this feels rushed, that's because it is, and I am very lazy at the moment. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to shove my head inside a fan to see how fast my head can cool off from all the complicated thoughts that I have on my mind. So some of you might suggest that I should go to a therapist, but I think that's better for me to do it when I'm the only human left on the world. So anyway, hope you have a good day. I'll see you people next time. Goodbye.